Hey everyone, welcome back. And in this video, I'm super excited to continue our first tutorial on MERN stack deployment and MERN stack creation video, in which I'll be continuing and building on top of this video and actually seeing how we can deploy our stack on DigitalOcean and a managed database. Now, this video is for people who want to go one step ahead and not just build projects, but also deploy them on live URLs. We will also see how we can set up a custom domain behind NGINX and have an HTTPS certificate and HTTPS lock, green lock available there as well. So I'm excited to start this video and hopefully you are too. Let's go. If you're new here, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. This is free of cost and helps the channel grow. So in this video, we'll be using DigitalOcean as our cloud provider. Why? There is no specific reason. I could have used AWS, but I do feel like AWS is a little bit more complicated for new developers who are starting off with cloud for the first time. So DigitalOcean is easy to get your toes, dipped into the water of clouds and stuff, and then move to AWS if you are doing any serious stuff. I have a link in description, which is a $25 referral link. So you get $25 when you sign up using that link for free. So that can act as something where you can just experiment, right? So check out that link. You'll get $25. You can use that. Pretty much everything we cover in this video can take you a long way in that. So I already do have a DigitalOcean account. You might want to create one using the link in the description. But once you create, you're going to be presented with a page like this. Now, in order to deploy our application first, you can see that we have a server folder right here with us. This means we need to spin up a node.js server. And for that, we need a computer which is running 24/7, 365 and can respond to people's requests, right? So the very first thing, just like you create a server on your local, but you can just move away or, shut down your laptop. We create a server on the cloud, but this server does not shut down, right? These are servers running in server farms and data centers across the world, and they can pretty much serve your website even when you're sleeping, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go to create a droplet right here, which is going to act as a computer, right? And you can start with regular Intel SSD, $5 per month. That's fine. You can choose a premium processor as well if you want, but this is like the cheapest one, which you can get for now. Just pick up any city. If you don't have any preference, the servers what I have seen in my personal opinion in US have a slightly better internet speed. I don't know, I haven't really done a lot of benchmarking, but definitely faster than Bangalore. So if you choose a New York or San Francisco, you get faster connections there on that server. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and let's say not select any one of them. That's fine. You can create a password for now. For the sake of simplicity, maybe we can get into SSH key generation and all the practices which you should follow in terms of hardening your server sometime later. But this video is about setting up the code on a production server, right? So I'm just going to keep my password abc@12345. So I have created a password which I have just written right here, and I'll obviously destroy this instance before this video goes live. But just for the sake of simplicity, there we go. YouTube video would be the title, and you can just give it some tags. My instance, that doesn't really matter, but there you go, and create a droplet. So what this droplet is going to do is it's going to create this YouTube video, $5 per month, one virtual CPU, 1 GB, 25 GB droplet, and it gives you this IPv4 address, right? If you copy this address and go right here in your terminal, what you're going to see is that you can SSH into this droplet. And how do you SSH into this directly is you say root @ you paste this IP address. And if you want a little bit more information, you can pass a verbosity flag. Otherwise, this is also fine. You can just do an SSH root @ the IP address, and it refuses because it's not completely booted. So give it a few seconds to boot completely. And once this is done, once the computer, the operating system, everything is up, you can SSH it directly. It will just ask you for a confirmation that do you trust the fingerprint of this? Again, something we'll discuss maybe sometime later because this lies more on the advanced side of things, but you should ideally just, pass in yes here. And it says that it has permission denied. Let's try it one more time because it said permission denied when it should have asked for the key for the password, and there we go. So the password right here is this for now. Ideally, you should be using an SSH key, but yeah, I don't remember if I have the correct SSH keys for DigitalOcean set up on my system. But anyway, right now you see that I am inside this root@YouTube video instance, which is actually this computer right here running on this port, right? Now, by default, if you open up this instance, this droplet, and go to the networking section in DigitalOcean, you have no firewall applied by default. What does that mean? This means that all the incoming traffic and all the outgoing traffic is allowed on this droplet, right? Which is a good setting for beginners, but not so good if you are doing anything advanced. So we will take a look at how you can set up the firewall later. But for now, the first thing we need to do is set up our project itself, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some basic installation. I'm going to go ahead and clone this repository. First of all, I'm going to do a git clone of this repository, which is the full MERN stack video. And right here, right away, you can see that we have the client server, just like we have inside our VS Code, right? But it doesn't really matter in terms of VS Code. But you see this server right here does not even have node.js installed so far. So what we need to do, first of all, is apt-get update and apt-get install npm. I mean, there are a couple of ways you can install Node. I have remembered one way, which is kind of hacky, but it works. So you install npm from apt-get, which installs an older version. Then with npm you install n, which is the node version manager, and with n you upgrade to the latest node, right? It works. There might be cleaner ways to do that, but that's something at least I can do without actually Googling or looking up on internet on how to do that. All right, so once this is installed, what you will be able to see is that you have npm installed, but so they have updated it. Earlier it used to be version 3 or something, but it's still older. So what you need to do next is do npm install global n, which is the node version manager right here. And then you just say n latest, as far as I remember. N latest. There you go. So it's just gonna install node 16, which is the latest node for now. Once you do that, you can just respawn a shell or just exit and SSH again. Basically one and the same thing. But what this would do is just set up the environment correctly, reboot the environment variables and stuff. So now when you do node v and npm v, you're gonna see that you are on latest versions. But what you're gonna see for this project, at least, we used yarn and not npm. So we're gonna have to install yarn, and I'm gonna do npm install globally yarn, and we want the first version of yarn because yarn 2 is a bit of a problem because it does not follow the same module system and the way modules work. But anyway, once you do that, you can see we are inside the client folder. I can just do yarn or yarn install. Pretty much everything would work. And the second thing we need to do is have to go into the server folder. Now, the way this would work, ideally, is we would not have two folders, but rather just the server folder being served, which serves this yarn folder to us, right? Which serves this front-end folder to us. If we take a look inside our application right now, what you're gonna see is we don't serve anything at all when we hit the get route. So what we have to do here instead is we need to add a condition, something like app.get star, and right here we need to just send the index.html from build folder, right? This is something which we need to do right now. So once we do that, you're gonna see that right here we have the node modules installed. The next thing I'm going to do is just going to say inside the package.json, we have inside of the client, we have a command called build, React scripts build, which creates a build version of the project. So when you run React, this yarn build command, it creates an optimized production build, which is minified JavaScript, which is just static build and static stuff, and it just puts it into a build folder. Ideally, all of these steps would go into a continuous integration pipeline like GitHub Actions, but we'll start slowly. We'll start it on the server side and then eventually shift it to a CI/CD complete pipeline where you don't have to worry about anything at all, right? So let it build. Meanwhile, what we need to do is we also need to configure the server repository. Server repository is pretty much simple because we just need this part of the thing, And the second thing which we need is just a way to start and restart the server using PM2. Alright, so right now inside the build folder, you can see we have all we need in terms of serving a static location of the website. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this build folder into the server folder and call it as static, right? That's it. Now let's go into the server folder which we have and do a yarn install again, because this is something which all the modules which the server side would need, and it's relatively fast because there's not a lot server needs. Okay, the next thing is we need an editor, which is always handy. Nano is installed by default, but yeah, you could install any other editor as well if you want. But this editor would allow us to do searching and replacing. So the first thing we need to do is let's put this on port 80. We can shift it to port 443 again, slowly and steadily, step by step. But the first thing we are trying to do is just get the things up and running. So this is one thing. The second thing we need to do is also serve the statics, like I said. So one way to serve that would be using the middleware by passing it through Express. Alright, in order to do that, we'll just say app.use express.static, and the directory we have is statics, I hope, and that's it. Once we have that, we can pretty much just see, we have static here, not static. So let's just quickly rename that by telling it it's static, and there we go. In terms of setup, this is more or less all we need to execute the programming language. So now if I just do a node index.js, all we will get is a MongoDB error, which is like we expect, right? And the good thing about Node is that you would not expect this to fail if this was before Node 14 or 15, I think. But from Node 16 onwards, the promises actually crash the Node process, which is a good thing, right? Because this means we cannot start our application if the database is down or, if some promise is failing. Good thing. So the next thing is we need to install MongoDB. So for MongoDB, we have two options. The first option is I can go ahead and install this on the main server itself, which is fine, which would work. But a better option is if you have the ability to use a managed database, then mostly always go for that if money is not a constraint. So you can go to this databases section on DigitalOcean, and you will see that DigitalOcean actually provides you a managed version of MongoDB 4.4, which is awesome because it costs you a bit more. You would see that it's $15 a month for 1 GB RAM, 1 VP virtual CPU, and 15 gigabytes of hard disk, whereas a simple raw compute instance is $5 a month for the same specs. But the fact is that this is managed. That means this cluster or this instance would be managed by DigitalOcean. You don't have to worry about the data loss, or this going down, or the disk just filling up completely and then crashing, and even backups in some case. I don't know if DigitalOcean provides that out of the box. But managed services are mostly easy for everyone, basically, because you just offload a part of responsibility of managing the infrastructure to somebody else, to a cloud, right? So in this case, I'm going to choose the San Francisco VPC. Why? Couple of reasons. The first one is obviously this will be closer because this is the same instance. And the second one, that this actually can lie in the same VPC, right? We have a YouTube video in SFO3 region. That means you can communicate the MongoDB instance over a private IP, which is of course faster because you don't have to route your traffic over to internet. So we can say this is like YouTube test DB, something like this, and the project should be my own. And there we go. Just create a database clusters. You can just keep a minimal database as well. It's fine. And all this would do is just give you a string of URL where you can connect your database to. So you can see it's setting up your database. Meanwhile it's doing that, we can do a little bit of other stuff which we need to do, which the first thing which comes to mind is actually setting up a PM2 instance. Now what a PM2 is? PM2 is a process manager for Node, which basically just keeps your Node.js server up and running if you are using it in a server full environment like this. So what it just needs to do is just need to install PM2 globally, and then you just need to say PM2 start, whatever the name of your thing is, right? Just like we do with NodeMon, PM2 start does the same thing, but it starts it in a production way which means that it will monitor your process for crashes and freezing. And if you want to restart it or reload it gracefully, you can do that with PM2. So all of that good stuff is available. And you also have, nice analytics, because that's the bare minimum things these tools give you. But yep. Let's wait for this database to provision. Meanwhile, what we can also do is, while we are at it, we can install NGINX in the server. Why? Because that will be needed when we convert our website to HTTPS, right? So ideally, we never really want our application to listen, the code of the application to listen on any port which is less than 1000, because all of those ports are reserved, right? That means you need a sudo permission to open a network connection on those ports. So what you ideally want is a reverse proxy like NGINX sitting in front of all the connections, and then it being proxying all of that stuff to your node.js application. Why that is helpful? That is helpful because NGINX can manage a few things much more efficiently than Node. For example, static file serving is one, TLS termination is another, and a bunch of rate limiting, for example, that is much faster. Pretty much anything you can do in NGINX would be faster than Node because that's written in C++. So all you need to do is say apt install, and probably looks like my S key is broken on Mac. But if you do apt install NGINX, that is all it's gonna take to install and set up and run NGINX and run as well. I mean, I'm pretty sure it also runs it, but we can just verify it once by pinging localhost 80, and you can see that we do get the NGINX response. And by the way, instead of doing this the geek way with curl, you could have also visited this website which we have, right? The IP address directly. So you can just say copy and paste it right here, and you would see NGINX page being up and ready here. Now the next thing we need to do is obviously go into etc NGINX and modify the configuration a little. And as far as I can remember, this is somewhere in sites available. And if you go to default, all you have to do is add a location block right here, right? So instead of root and stuff and doing all this stuff, you can just comment this out, and you have to say for all the locations, all you want to do is proxy pass on localhost 1337. Again, not the best and the solid configuration which you would want, but this would work. And once you do that, all you need to do is just say sudo service restart NGINX, sudo service NGINX restart. It has been some time I use some server full environment. I'm usually using serverless. But anyway, once you do that, what you will see now is that NGINX, this page would stop loading, right? It says 502 bad gateway. And the reason for that is nothing is really listening on port number 1337. But we know that our application would be once we, just make it proper. And right here, meanwhile we were doing this, our database is ready. So let's just make those couple of changes and see how that looks like. So let's get started. Let's add a trusted resource for YouTube video, and because we are in a VPC, so that will work just fine. We have the username, we have the password, we have the host name, and so on. So let's show the password. Let's make these changes right away. So I'm going to go into the server folder, nano the index.js file, and let's comment this out, and let's say mongoose.connect MongoDB. We have the username, the rate password with the host name, and the database is admin, right? And you can just add a new protocol, which is the plus SRV thing. So MongoDB plus SRV. That's fine. Once you do that, save this. And also, we also need to remove the port number from 80 to 1337 because that's where we are redirecting our traffic for NGINX. The moment we do that and hit node index.js, it should hopefully work. And I did some problem here in terms of writing this. This should be actually separated by a colon, and this is GQ, and then this should be an @ The port number should appear somewhere here, but we can skip that because it's 27017, which is the default port number. All right, looks like we are up and ready. And after refreshing the page, you can see we get nothing because we don't have anything configured on the homepage route. But you can see the obvious problem here now. Because we are serving this bundle from the server, this route right here is handled by the node.js process, right? And it cannot find it inside static folders, so nothing really happens. So one more thing which we need to do in the server file itself is do this part, which we actually wrote a pseudocode for. So we can go to the end of file and we can right here just say app.get on every single route which is not matched above. Just go ahead and, as far as I can remember, we just have a request response rest.send file path.join dir name, and we have the build index, not build actually, static index.html, right? And I do believe that we might have to import the path package. I'm not sure if we already have that. Doesn't look like, so we can just say require path, just like this. Some mini changes, but hopefully that will be enough. So let's do it one more time and refresh the page, and let's see if that works. That definitely works, because now what's happening is that on every single route, we are technically just redirecting it to React app. And this React app right here hits this area where it tries to guess that using the browser router. So we have defined it for login, we have defined it for registration, and we have defined it for dashboard. So let's go to register right here and open our debugger, and right here let's try out with a new Mehul name and pass email as mehul@test.com. Paste this, register, and right here you can see the second obvious problem. We have localhost 1337, which is hard coded, which is probably our fault inside the front end. So let me just fix that up really quick and resume the video again. Okay, after making this change on the back end by removing the localhost 1337 hard-coded route, if we just build it and try it again, what we will see is when I hit on register, we get a 200 OK response from the server. That also means our MongoDB connection is working absolutely fine. And all I have to do now is just log in with the same credentials, and I should be able to go to my dashboard and say whatever I want, right? And update this code. This is happening over the intranet on MongoDB as well. All right, so the next step now is to configure PM2 to start this, right? Instead of just running it via node. So all you have to do for that is go to the folder, write PM2 start index.js, and that's it. PM2 will now take care of this node.js process not going down, or if it's going down, just restarting it. And anytime you want to take a look at what's running, what's not running, you can see PM2 is running right now. It's not using a lot of CPU, and if you go ahead and refresh your application, it is just gonna work pretty much the way it was working locally as well. I'm gonna cover one final part before we close this video, that is how to set up a custom domain and an HTTPS certificate, because I believe a lot of people still struggle with that. So what I'm gonna do is I have this domain called webx.sh and it's running on Cloudflare, but pretty much all you have to do is figure out what your registrar is for the domain and go to the DNS section of that registrar. It could be GoDaddy, it could be unlimited websites out there. You have to arrive at this panel which allows you to add a record somewhere in your domain. And all you have to do in order to map a domain to an IP address is click on this add a record. Make sure this is an A record, because an A record tells the DNS where the domain should resolve to. And in our case, this is this IP address right here. I'm gonna hit an @ for root. For you, it might be just www or anything, but @ is fine. Just put the IP address, nothing else. You can just remove the proxy if you want. It's fine if you just keep it on as well. But the moment you do that, now this domain right here will start pointing to this IP address. So if I visit webx.sh, you can see that it still loads that application. If I go to register, for example, or dashboard, as a matter of fact, you will see that it just resolves to the correct IP address. And again, you would need to log in first. So I had an account mehul@test.com, I guess. And if I hit login, let's see, we have logged in successfully. And right here, you can see whatever I want is the code which I saved. So the final nail in the coffin is to actually install Let's Encrypt's certbot in order to provide an HTTPS certificate. And for that, you can just pretty much follow this DigitalOcean guide /commands. You don't necessarily have to read all of this, but all you have to do is install something known as certbot. Now the certbot is a package which will help you not only just generate these HTTPS certificates, but also renew them over time. So this also we need to do a small NGINX change as well, which we will take a look at. But let's go ahead and first of all install the certbot properly. You can see once that is installed, certbot is installed, we need to modify the NGINX site available, which we just did. Let's just go into NGINX, etc NGINX again, and take a look at this sites available folder. And inside default, we have to change the server name, the block which we had for server name, I guess. Yeah. So we had this underscore right here. You have to replace it with webx.sh because certbot needs to know which domain it is creating a certificate for, right? And once you do that, that's pretty much it, because certbot just needs to read it. You may reload NGINX, but to be honest, it's not really required. But yeah, you can do that. That's fine. There we go. And then finally, all you have to do, we know that we don't use the UFW firewall on DigitalOcean, so we can skip this. All you have to do is copy this much part, paste it, and then write the name of your domain. In this case, it's webx.sh. You can put email ID if you want, mehul@codedamn.com. For me, not that it matters. You can just agree. That's fine. That's fine. And you can see now it performs some challenges and verifications. It's going to give you a DNS challenge to prove whether you own the domain or not. You can just select number 2 as redirected to all, and that's it. You have occupied the required certificates. And I forgot to mention, you don't really need a DNS challenge because it's just doing a verification on your path, on placing some files on your domain and then trying to hit them to see if they are present. You need DNS challenge if you want a wildcard subdomain HTTPS certificate. But once you do that, once you complete this, all you have to do is nothing, basically. That's it. That's all that needs to be done. And if you refresh this, you're going to see that you automatically get redirected to the HTTPS version now. So this is how you have deployed a complete application on DigitalOcean with a managed database and droplet compute without actually just killing yourself or spending hours and days on that. Now there is one component which is still left here, which is the continuous integration and continuous deployment using GitHub Actions, which would ease our life so much that all the further updates in this full stack deployment folder are just a git commit away, right? That's all you need to do. But that is going to be part 3 of this, which would be most likely the final part of the series. But I hope you are enjoying this. Hope we would cover some more important practices in the next video, taking a look at how you can set up a CI/CD, how that will help you speed up your workflow, how you can add some tests as well, even if you want, and how you can gracefully reload the application once the deployment happens. So that is all for this video. Hopefully you were able to follow along and complete this full deployment. In the next one, we'll be focusing more on CI/CD, that is setting up a continuous integration and deployment pipeline with GitHub Actions, which is going to simplify a lot of the problems in terms of updating the code and refreshing, reloading the service under the hood as the updates happen. But that's all for this one. If you liked it, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna see you in the next video really soon. If you're still watching this video, make sure you comment down in the comment section, I watched this video till the end. Also, if you're not part of CodeDamm's Discord community, you're missing out a lot on events which we organize on a weekly basis to code. You already know the drill. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and thank you so much for watching.